Welcome to the Be Here Now Guest Podcast. This series features a collection of teachings and conversations centered around mindfulness, spiritual growth, and living a life in balance. Each week, our diverse network of guest teachers and hosts offer up wisdom and practices from a different spiritual path and perspective. If you would like to support this podcast, please visit BeHereNowNetwork.com/donate.
Welcome, amazing Ramdas satsang. We're here gathered from around the world. I'm Jackie Dobrinska. I'm the Education and Community Outreach Director for the Love, Serve, Remember Foundation. I'm so excited to welcome Mirabai Starr. She's known Ramdas since I think she was 14, and she recently joined the Love, Serve, Remember Foundation board. We're so excited to have her. And she's really been the spark for the Women's Fellowship as well. Many of you probably know her as a feminine mystic, and she has written so many brilliant books about mystics, from Julian of Norwich to John of the Cross. And if you haven't read her most recent book, Wild Mercy, you have to run out and get it. It is absolutely fabulous. It's balm for the soul. And there's so much to say about this woman that I'm just going to skip all of that and say one of the things that is so meaningful to me about her is that deep wisdom and profound authenticity and just brilliant open heart. And so with that, let's welcome Mirabai Starr.
Thank you, Jackie. That was a very real introduction, and it means a lot to me. So appreciate you so much. You're another one of those persons behind the scenes doing such beautiful seva. Hello, everyone. It's a joy to be with you. Thanks for gathering here this evening, and thanks for welcoming me to this gathering. I'd like to start from a place of quiet rather than words, and so if you'll join me, I'm going to light a candle to evoke the sacred space that is already permeating us all. I can feel it. To honor that space. And then I'm going to ring a bell and read a poem by Lala, the 14th century Kashmiri poet, mystic. So I light this candle in honor of all of you who have made your way to this little campfire today from wherever you are. Whatever it is in your life that has brought you to this moment, I honor you and welcome you. And I call on all the ancestors and the unseen beings who are with us to support us as we do this deep soul work, this heart celebration. And now I'm going to light a candle. I'm going to ring this gong, getting my ritual objects mixed up. It's all just forms. Form is formlessness. Formlessness is form. And with each sound of this bell, I invite you to just allow yourself to fully inhabit this present moment, to just drop in and take refuge in exactly what is right now. To the extent that you're able, just setting aside the rest of your day and allowing yourself to simply be here. From Lala. Your way of knowing is a private herb garden. Enclose it with the hedge of meditation and self-discipline and helpfulness to others. Then everything you've done before will be brought as a sacrifice to the Mother Goddess. And each day, as you eat the herbs, the garden grows more bare and empty. Your way of knowing is a private herb garden. Enclose it with a hedge of meditation and self-discipline and helpfulness to others. Then, everything you've done before will be brought as a sacrifice to the Mother Goddess. And each day, as you eat the herbs, the garden grows more bare and empty. So Lala is inviting us to dwell in unknowing, to allow all our preconceptions to fall away, and to allow ourselves to be nourished by that nakedness. So taking 3 deep breaths now at your own pace, inhaling all the way, holding the inhalation for as long as you can, and then letting all the breath go and holding the exhalation for as long as you can. 3 deep, full, cleansing breaths at your own pace. Allowing yourself to linger in the empty space between the breaths. Taking your time, and whenever you've finished with your 3 deep breaths, simply rest in your natural breathing and take refuge there for just a moment. So I'm going to just read a little something from Wild Mercy. It's the opening to the chapter on community, which is what we're cultivating here, satsang. Maybe you feel special. Sometimes this feels like a curse, like no one will understand you, ever. Like you will always be an alien walking among regular humans, pretending to blend in. You've learned to live with this gulf, but what you really crave is community. You long to belong to the human family, to Mother Earth. Participating in the human condition can be bewildering. It's not always cozy and easy. Rather, it's humbling at best, downright humiliating when it's not flowing. It can seem so much simpler to ride solo, slaying your own dragons and singing the ballads you wrote about yourself. Collaboration can be tedious, and the prevailing masculine value system may have conditioned you to feel like you're giving away your power when you share it with others. So what? Give it away. The time of the singular sage bestowing his unique wisdom is over. That was a method devised by the men in charge who sought to regulate wisdom. They taught us to suffer alone in the desert for 40 years, collecting our insights in a secret box labeled esoteric knowledge. Then we were supposed to dispense those insights stingily to those who proved themselves worthy by also suffering alone for the requisite 40 years in the desert. It turns out that this world is filled with special beings, grappling our way through the anxiety of solitary conundrums and tasting the occasional reprieve of connection. When you realize this, your body lets out its breath and relaxes. The curse lifts. You come in from the cold. You hold out your cup, and some other special being fills it with sweet, milky tea, spiced with fragrant herbs. You drink. The way of the feminine is to find out what everyone is good at and praise them for it and get them to teach it to one another. Maybe you know something about the hidden meanings of the Hebrew letters, or how to build a sustainable home from recycled tires and rammed soil, or loving kindness meditation. You, the one who knows the Islamic call to prayer, climb this minaret and call us all to prayer. You, the one who knows how to sit quietly at the bedside of the dying, show us the way to bear witness. You, the one who knows how to get us to wake up to the shadow of privilege, please wake us the fuck up. It will be chaotic, all this community building, but your cooperation will save the world. Besides, it will be fun. So, as Jackie mentioned, and as many of you know, I had the great good fortune of meeting Ram Dass when I was 14, living at the Lama Foundation in northern New Mexico, where I'm still very much involved, and where Ram Dass created Be Here Now with the Lama Beans in 1970. And so that was 75 is when I was 14, and when I met Ram Dass. And when I fell in love with Maharaji, with Neem Karoli Baba, who became very much the ground of my spiritual life from that moment on. What I learned most, I feel, from my association with Ram Dass and my deep connection to the teachings of Maharaji is sub-ek, all is one, and that the one shines from the heart of every spiritual tradition on the planet. That, coupled with Lama Foundation, where that is the purpose of that intentional community, Lama, to be a meeting of the ways, as Murshid Sam called it, and all the practices from all the traditions that I have gotten to experience and deeply embody at Lama, that has set the course of my life. And Ram Dass did that. He drew from all of the world's wisdom traditions all the time. Whenever he was teaching, he would quote scriptures from all traditions, from Taoism, from the Tao Te Ching, from Kabbalah, from Christian scriptures, from Sufi poetry, from of course the Hindu scriptures, and all of the great world's wisdom ways. So this has been my life. My path is an interspiritual one, like a bee drawing nectar from the garden of the human spirit and trying to share that elixir with others. But a few years ago, it began to dawn on me, as it has on many of you, that the world's primary spiritual traditions and religious institutions are dominated by the patriarchy, that the scriptures of all the world's religions are mostly written by men and for a male experience of the universe and the world and the human community. Which is not to say that they are bad. They are beautiful jewels, wisdom jewels available to us across the spiritual landscape. But for those of us who are female or non-binary, or are men who are just sick of what they experience as the oppressive message of this kind of masculine paradigm, we're not seeing ourselves in these wisdom traditions. It's why the movement toward inclusivity of Black, Indigenous, people of color, and what did you call it, Jackie? Primary world community or something. Voices need to be brought from the margins, centered and lifted right now, because there are such a huge swath of the human family that isn't seeing themselves reflected in anywhere in across the spectrum of human endeavor, politics, the arts, academics. But the area that I'm most interested in is religion and spirituality. And the same is true for women. We can find them. We can find the women mystics. We can certainly find the goddesses, but they are not centered. They're always other, as Simone de Beauvoir said in the 50s, the second sex. It's not what we look to first. You know, when we think of a human, we're conditioned to think of a white dude. When we look to the spiritual life, we're also conditioned to look for these masculine teachings. So how do we here in the Ramdas family, as devotees of Neem Karoli Baba, not all of us who are gathered today that right in this moment are devotees of Neem Karoli Baba, but many of us are, how do we notice that predominance of boy-shaped wisdom teachings and intentionally shift the lens to include women's wisdom and the teachings of the feminine in the form of the goddesses and the archetypal feminine beings that are available to us throughout the spiritual spectrum. So I am particularly interested in mystics like Santa Teresa de Avila, Saint Teresa of Avila, the 16th century Spanish nun who was actually Jewish but forced to convert by the Inquisition, or her family was. Hildegard of Bingen, the nature mystic. Julian of Norwich, who gave us the beautiful saying that all will be well and all will be well, and every kind of thing shall be well. Because Julian goes on to say, God is the mother. But also other wisdom beings from other traditions. Well, Sophia, of course, from the Judeo-Christian traditions. Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad in the Islamic tradition. Rabia, the great Sufi poet. Lala and Mirabai, the Hindu poets, all the Hindu goddesses that we love and adore and draw upon, Kali and Durga and Sita and Radha and Parvati and Lakshmi. And the Shekhinah in Judaism, the indwelling feminine presence of the divine. She is embodiment, she is immanence. So these are the wisdom beings that feed me and guide me and remind me that the spiritual landscape is my home too. And I know that that is true for many of you who are not women, who feel equally oppressed by these patriarchal structures that are beginning to topple before our eyes. The seams are fraying and coming undone. And there are people who are madly trying to prop up these old, toxic structures that no longer serve. And it's not working. And the feminine is rising everywhere. It's rising in our satsang in a really big way. I've been hearing from younger women, especially in our satsang, for years as I've been teaching in the legacy retreats when Ramdas was still alive to guide me, and since he's been gone, from women who are saying we want more of the voice of the feminine, of the wisdom of women. And so we're trying to respond to that call. And I for one, have been really enjoying excavating the jewels of women's wisdom across these spiritual traditions. And it does take that effort to excavate them, to find them, and to lift them. But they're shining everywhere. Much easier to find now than ever before. And I know that many of you join me in that desire and that effort. So I think that's enough of that for now. Yeah, I think that's enough for now. I'd love to just hear what's on your minds and hearts, and I'm sure I will have some responses. I like to call this portion Q&R rather than Q&A because I have no answers, but I have responses for sure. So please let me hear.
Thank you so much. I love that the spiritual landscape is mine too. This just rings so true. And just to answer your question earlier, it's what I say is Black, Indigenous, and people of color / world majority, which is a really powerful reframe.
World majority. So, beautiful.
World majority.
It is a powerful reframe.
Mm-hmm. So you were just finished talking about the call forward in this spiritual landscape is mine too. And you're sort of hinting at the women's circle that's coming up. Do you want to talk about that for a second? And the inspiration of that and how it weaves in with the teachings of Maharaji and Ram Dass?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I have been hearing from a lot of women in our satsang for a long time that as I said, that they're craving this cup of feminine wisdom from the wellspring, the vast wellspring of women's wisdom across all the religions, but especially here in our tradition. And also there's this sense in which when we have these, quote, affinity groups, these gatherings of people, like people of color or women or LGBTQ or whatever these groups are of people who aren't necessarily seeing themselves in the dominant community, there is a way in which we can let out our breath. We can relax. We can take refuge. We can hear each other, and we can hear each other through that listening heart that is, I don't want to say natural because that's problematic, but is so familiar to feminine spaces. I was just thinking about today, I had a couple of different conversations on the phone and then one in person with different women, different spheres of my life. And I came away from each one with this sense of, even though there were some challenging things we had to talk about, there was nevertheless this sense of refuge and community and knowing each other's hearts and trusting each other's hearts. It's not that I don't feel that in mixed spaces, but I definitely feel it when in women's circles and circles that are free from a masculine influence. I'm not dissing men. We are not dissing men when we offer to gather in this way, but we're making a place for women in our satsang who have often felt marginalized in various ways so that we can hear each other. And I think one of the most important things about this women's circle that we're convening is that it's going to be cooperatively led. Like I read about in that opening from my chapter on community and wild mercy, it's a matter of kind of scanning to see who has what gifts to bring to the table, because it's your turn. You don't just have to listen to the person sitting on the platform dispensing their dharma to you as the hungry recipient. This is a place where we want to share leadership, which is in many ways the feminine way. So is there anything, Jackie, you would like to?
No, that's great.
Okay.
That's good. Thank you. So speaking of the reading, the call that you make for people to bring forward and share not just their gifts, but themselves. One of the watchers tonight asks, how can I let down my wall and truly connect with others? Sharing my genuine self can be very scary. I often fear others' reactions.
Yeah, that's Fritz. Fritz is the name my beloved friend Elaine, who is a Sufi poet who died recently, gave to that inner critic that is a white dude that we were all conditioned to listen to, who tells us that we're in trouble. And you're not in trouble. Tells us that we're too much when we express our hearts and our feelings. You're not too much. Tells us that we're not enough. We're not pure enough. We're not perfected enough. We're not neurotic enough. We're not unneurotic enough, whatever it may be, that we're not disciplined enough spiritually. These are all the toxic inheritances that we receive. Is that a word, inheritances? From this patriarchal paradigm that all of us have inherited. So I wish for you that you recognize your vulnerability as your superpower, that you claim your naked heart as holy ground, that you take the hands of others when you're ready to step up and share yourself, so that you know that you're not alone, that many of us are working, striving, grappling with that message that tells us it's not safe to be vulnerable and naked and true to our own hearts. You are in good company, and I'm with you, and I have to do this work every day to stay vulnerable and authentic and not either collapse or over apologize or pretend I know shit that I do not know. To welcome not knowing together in the community. Thank you. Beautiful question.
Thank you. That invitation to both now and in the book, Wild Mercy of Being Vulnerable, and is the invitation and an allowance for that is such a gift. Mm-hmm. Earlier, you were talking about sort of dominator culture.
Much better than patriarchy. Thank you. I'm going to replace patriarchy with dominator culture.
Both work, yes. So there's this, the things we've learned through them. And one of the questions that come up is something about good methods for mastering self-control. And I'm curious about this from both of those sort of views, of the feminine view as well as the traditional view.
Great question. Okay, so although I want to say that the very notion of self-control is an artifact of that dominant masculine paradigm that we're trying to shake off, it's not like anything goes. I'm not speaking about a space of chaos, although there is an element of holy chaos in the feminine that I bless and that I invite you to welcome and bless. But there is also this sense in which the feminine is the ultimate structure. The womb, look at the womb. It holds life and nourishes life within a very particular container. And so there is a way that taking a breath and allowing ourselves to kind of open the field of awareness and not stay fixated on some idea that doesn't serve is a great spiritual gift. That being able to not just immediately react to a challenging, say, emotional trigger, but to be able to actually breathe into it, to honor the feelings as they arise, and to also have the containment capacity to hold it and bear witness. Ram Dass's teachings on the witness could be used as a spiritual bypass if we're not actually really engaging what that teaching is that he gave us. He wasn't encouraging us to use this teaching of the witness to check out of reality and rise above it. That is a very masculine kind of teaching, and certainly Ram Dass was conditioned that way as well. But he over and over again invited us to fully inhabit what is, with breath, with spaciousness, in the heart. That the witness is not some transcendent, cerebral, beyond the beyond spiritual persona that looks down on it all with disdain. The witness is a space of loving awareness that is present in the very heart of the most challenging and chaotic and painful and interpersonally charged moments. us. And if we can exercise the discipline of meditation and breath and all of the tools we've learned, not to get away from, but to show up in those difficult spaces, that's the discipline that liberates, I think. So I hear. I'm planning to try it any day myself.
I'll be right there with you. Trevor asks, I have Ram Dass in my ear saying, what you resist persists. How does that balance with standing up to toxic culture traditions?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Exactly. That's where I think many of us are right now. And I know many of you gathered are resonating with Trevor's question. So how do we speak truth to power and stay in the open heart? They are not mutually exclusive. When we identify with this dualistic understanding of the bad guys and the good guys, the perpetrators and the victims, or the ones who are marginalized and those of us who swoop in to save them, we are locking ourselves into a very small frame, and it's really difficult to come back to the heart, which is vast. It's scary to dwell in the heart because it's a place of mystery. At least the feminine heart is. It's a place where there is a great degree of tolerance for ambiguity that the masculine paradigm cautions us against or conditions us to believe is a problem to be solved. Like, stop being, so ambiguous. Get precise. The feminine heart space sees ambiguity as a higher truth, paradox as a vast space of truth. So this heart has the capacity, because it's so vast, to hold seemingly contradictory propositions like everything is perfect and this sucks and it's fucked up. And I am incarnated as a human being to do my part to alleviate suffering. Both are true. There is this perfection that we have access to, and it lies in the realm of the heart, not of the mind. And there is injustice, and it is real. And from that broken, open heart, we cannot help but have the impulse to alleviate that suffering. And then by engaging all of the spiritual technologies that we can get our hands on, we are empowered to do something. We're energized to do something, but only, best in community. As I said, the time of that solitary prophet, it is over. We can only do this together. Thank God. I'm so relieved that it's not up to me. So I hope that helps a little bit.
I think that helps so much for me anyway.
Good.
And that reminder that just taking it all off of our shoulders to do it together.
Yeah.
So speaking of power and the heart being a place of mystery that allows ambiguity, and yet we're breaking open and feeling energized. And in that mix, there's this desire to know our higher self and purpose. And someone asked, what's the best way to connect with that higher self and purpose?
Thank you. Beautiful question. Well, for me, the most important element of that journey is the willingness to first not know and to deconstruct all my preconceptions about what it means to be of service. For me, that was very necessary. So, for instance, I am a writer and I love the beauty of language. And there was a time early in my spiritual life where I felt like I had to give up poetry. I had to give up writing. I even had to give up drawing and making art and doing all of those things because I had to be on a totally dedicated, disciplined spiritual path. And those things were somehow frivolous or too personal or something. And it took me years to realize that for me, the creative arts, particularly writing, was and is my vehicle for stepping up in this world. It's my container for seva. It is my form of tikkun olam. In the Jewish tradition, tikkun olam is the repair or the mending of this broken world that human beings are incarnated to do. And it also says in the Jewish mystical wisdom that what is ours in particular, your particular task to do, is imprinted on your soul the day that you're born. So you don't have to worry about it. It's there. Everything you need. Not only is your offering there, but your capacity for activating it is also there, and the energy that's required. So to trust that and to get quiet enough, and there are all kinds of contemplative methodologies that we know of that enable us, that support us in growing quiet and still enough to listen so that we can hear what is ours to do. And I will tell you a couple of things. One is it's probably already something that you love. Like for me, it was writing and speaking and words, language. The holiness of language, including chanting, by the way, is one of my paths. Maybe not my greatest path of service, but it's definitely a path that gets me beyond my separate, the illusion of separation from the one. But the other thing is it lies in community. Like it took, for me, some nuns in their 70s, Catholic nuns who had been imprisoned for their peace activism, to whom I was comparing myself, to say, Mirabai, no. That's what we're doing. That's ours to do. But what yours to do is to use language to knock on the doors of people's hearts. I was like, really? I get to do that? Because I love to do that. And they were like, yes. Not only do you get to do that, you are needed. The prophets need the drink of water that you carry. So what is yours? What is the thing that you love to do that people have probably always responded to? Is it the way you cook a beautiful meal, your hospitality? Is it the way you treat children? Is it your vulnerable heart that you bring to the table again and again? What is it? What is yours? Be quiet and listen, but also ask. Ask your elders. What do you think is mine to do? They may know.
It's so beautiful. And it speaks again to that importance of community, that you had a community of folks that helped. And that trust. And that sort of leads to the next question that someone asks is, trusting the process of spiritual awakening. How can we trust our process of spiritual awakening? They write, I feel so lonely in this.
Oh, that's what Sangha is, right? When in the teachings of Buddhism, there's that triple gem of taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, right? And I like to reframe the three jewels, the refuge vow, setting aside the vow part for the time being as the masculine part, which is fine, but centering the refuge part, which is the feminine part of that jewel. And when we take refuge in the Buddha, we don't just have to look to the life of Siddhartha Gautama, the man who woke up, that we know as the Buddha, as an exemplar of awakening. We can look to women across the spiritual traditions and throughout time, women mystics from across the centuries, and women of wisdom right now, known and unknown. Maybe just you know them. Maybe it's the woman missing teeth at the 7-Eleven who has that awake smile in her eyes. You know that she has seen some things and They have enlarged her heart. Her suffering has made her more compassionate and more awake. So look to the Buddha everywhere, but especially in feminine form for now. Take refuge in those women. Take refuge in the Dharma, the teachings of all the world's great spiritual traditions, but look especially for the feminine wisdom teachings, the Dharma in the form of the mystical poetry of women, both from long ago and right now. There are so many contemporary women poets who are mystics, who have the goods right now. They may be political, they may be feminist, they may be queer, they may be wearing all of these different beautiful disguises, but they are the mystics of our times. Look to them for the Dharma. And finally, and most importantly, look to the Sangha in the forms that are led by and saturated with the feminine heart. These collections of community that hold our communal wisdom, our collective wisdom. That, as Thich Nhat Hanh so famously said, remember that the next Buddha, because Buddhism, like Christianity, like Islam, like Judaism, believes in a kind of second coming or a messianic reality that's coming. But the next Buddha will be the Sangha. Ram Dass is no longer in his body, right? We are it. That when I am asked to teach at these legacy retreats, those of you who've gathered with me I know it's not about me carrying Ram Dass's legacy as Mirabai Starr. It's about me being so implanted with Ram Dass's seeds over the years that I can't help but share and feed others who I know and call upon others who I know carry the exact wisdom that we most need to walk forward together. And we all take turns holding that seat of lineage, but it's all of our turn right now. So that was a long answer. I hope it addressed some your question in some way.
So you may have already answered this question, but it seems to follow suit. And so I want to ask it specifically. It says, do you have any thoughts on sadhana and the feminine? I often feel like I must meditate and chant, etc., in order to be spiritual, yet it can feel rigid. How do you perform sadhana joyfully?
Right. That's so wonderful. Oh, I'm so glad you brought up joy, because that is exactly one of the burdens we bear from the, what do you call it? Dominating culture.
Dominator culture.
Dominator. That's even better. The dominator culture is this sense that that the spiritual path is this grim job that we got to get done. And it's the endless self-improvement project. Now, I'm speaking to you from someone who's right in the middle of that every day, dismantling that consciously every day. How do we take refuge in our sadhana rather than use it as a bludgeon to beat the shit out of ourselves and make ourselves feel like we're never enough and we're always too much? How does sadhana become a cup of beautiful, clear water, or intoxicating wine, or nourishing milk that feeds us and opens our hearts and softens us and makes us happy? So I'm coming to the point where, and the pandemic has really been this has been one of the gifts of this time of sheltering close to home, which I have the privilege to do because I'm a writer and a teacher, and I can do it from home and make my living this way. But I've come to the point where my morning sadhana of asanas and meditation practice are the most delicious bathing in the arms of the goddess is how it's come to feel. So I'm doing many of the same practices that I always have, but instead of being this chore that I need to check off my list, it's becoming a space of deep nourishment in ways that it hasn't been in years. And I picked up my bamboo flute that I got from Sept when I was, 16, and carried with me all over Europe in my late teens and early 20s, and played at all these sacred sites. And then I put it aside, or it was just on my puja table for years and years and years. And recently I've picked it up and I've started playing it every morning at the end of my meditation. And I'm like a kid that's just like found this new thing that's just filling me with delight. And I'm starting to draw again, like listening to podcasts in the evenings and taking out my colored pencils and my sketch pads and just drawing for the joy of it. And that's becoming my sadhana again. And so if you can find ways to enter fully into what you love, whether it's chanting or meditation or any of the creative arts, as an offering to the Holy One. And if you like, picture the Holy One on purpose in a girl's shape, as the goddess, as Mother Earth, as your lover or beloved. However you can relate to the sacred feminine now, make your sadhana an offering of love to her. You probably already are, but see if just reminding yourself of that reinfuses it with that feminine heart of delight.
Thank you. That hearing these words feel, again, even when reading the book, Wild Mercy, it feels like this invitation and permission to sit into that feminine heart. And I really appreciate how you spoke into that question.
Thank you.
Yeah. So much I want to say about it. And
Maybe
more about, but I'll just go to the next question.
I don't want to be the boss of you. I want you to say stuff.
No, it was I just the shoulding mind can be so hard to let go of, and for several years I had to just give up all of my practices because they just had so much should energy in them, and then slowly like picking them back up from that, like because they are delightful, but it felt like this like sacrilegious to put them all down.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that you did that too. I called it my firing Krishna phase, which is a big deal. Yes, the shouldy mind. I love that, Jackie.
Someone else asks, I am learning to, as Ram Dass would say, take on the curriculum of being human. Can you speak on integrating and harmonizing spirit with form and form with spirit?
Right. So that dualism falls away in the feminine heart. And again, when I say feminine, I'm speaking to people of all genders. I hope you hear that. You know, that feminine heart in all of us, where the difference between spiritual practice and stepping up in the world dissolves in the warmth of that heart space. And that then the sacred just flows into and permeates and saturates the ground of our humanity, so that there is nothing that isn't spiritual, that isn't sacred, that isn't holy ground. So I think just somehow taking refuge again in that feminine heart will warm up those boundaries so that they will kind of their own accord soften and dissolve, and those dualities will no longer apply. That even, a life of action versus a contemplative life becomes a distinction that no longer makes any sense to your heart. Saint Teresa of Avila, Santa Teresa, who I love so much, said, if you're familiar with the Christian myth, and for those of you who are Christians, I hope you don't mind my calling it a myth, but the Martha and Mary story, where Mary's sitting at Jesus's feet, taking in the teachings, neglecting everything else. And Martha is bustling around, getting shit done and starting to resent Mary for not helping her, these two sisters. And what Teresa says is Martha and Mary both live in the center of our own being. They're sisters and they work together. And that's what's beautiful. So I don't know if that addresses your question. I say that every time, my little disclaimer, but thank you for asking it.
Would you speak a little bit more about the sisterhood? Someone else is in this class with Saint Teresa of Avila, and really grateful for it and curious about the timelessness of the sisterhood teachings.
Okay, first I have a question. Jackie, can you hear my dogs barking? I hope not, because my dogs are barking, and I just hope that's not disturbing anyone. Okay, the sisterhood, of Martha and Mary and Teresa of Avila's teachings. Do you think that's what specifically she's asking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, or he. So just for those of you who don't know, there's a class that I teach for the Center of Action and Contemplation, Father Richard Rohr's organization, with the living mystic Jim Finley, on Teresa of Avila. And so Teresa is very beloved to me. I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning that I've translated her masterworks, the Book of My Life, which is one of the most spectacular autobiographies of a mystic I've ever read. It's definitely the best one I've ever translated, the only one. And her masterwork, The Interior Castle. And Teresa gives a lot of teachings that really help ground us in the holiness of being a human being. And one of them is that she tries to absolve us of this false dichotomy that we have inherited, taken on, and it's been foisted upon us, of we're either doing what needs to be done in the world, we're speaking truth to power, we're dismantling the false structures of white supremacy and injustice, or we are just engaging in meditative practices all the time and spiritually bypassing reality and ignoring the suffering of the world, but attaining some kind of space of peace. So what Teresa says is that, and this is a very feminine teaching, that these two parts of ourselves, the active and the contemplative, belong to each other. They're integrated. They're of the same family. They are feminine. They are sisters, and they both abide in the heart. And they both serve that Christ reality, which, according to Julian of Norwich, is also a feminine being. So there was one other insight I had about that. What I've noticed, and I think many of you can resonate with this, is that as an activist, a reluctant prophet, I call myself, but a lifelong activist, there is no fucking way I can step up unless I have some kind of contemplative life. And it doesn't have to be sitting on a cushion, although that's a practice that's really helpful. It's also walking in the woods. I have the great grace of living on the edge of national forest here in northern New Mexico, and I spend time every single day, all seasons, deep winter and the height of summer, walking with Mother Earth. That is a huge part of my contemplative life. And those contemplative spaces enable me, nourish me to step up. Spaces of joy and celebration also nourish me so that I can have something to give, so that I can enter the fray without getting completely thrown off balance, that I can step into the world with some sense of equanimity and joy. And then I find that I have more to give of what my particular thing may be to give. And so we think we're not supposed to rest. That's why I have a Sabbath practice. In my case, I draw on my ancestral tradition of Judaism, and I observe Shabbat every week. When the sun goes down on Friday, I light those candles. I welcome the Shekhinah, the indwelling feminine presence, and she's with me. She's with me all the time, but she's especially with me on Shabbat as a resource to navigate the space of rest that is so difficult to embrace because our culture is constantly imposing that tyranny of tasks upon us. But when I observe Shabbat, and anyone of any tradition or no tradition is welcome to do this from sunset on Friday to sunset on Saturday, or whatever the shape of your life works, whatever works for the shape of your life, to keep a Sabbath holy. That is when my cup is filled so that I have something to offer in this world. So I encourage everyone to consider cultivating some kind of Sabbath practice and taking refuge there and drawing joy from that. And it's about not just reading sacred scriptures and poetry, although that's a beautiful thing to do on Shabbat, but the highest mitzvah in Judaism is to make love with your beloved on the Sabbath. So sensuality and embodiment, connectedness to the earth and to all other creatures, is also a part of that holy Sabbath space, celebrating life, chaim, food, good food, community, connection. All of those good things are holy, and they energize us, because it's hard fucking work to step up in this divisive world and to keep our hearts open in hell, as Ram Dass used to say. It's challenging. We need each other, and we need rest, and we need celebration. And it's hard in these times when we're isolated from each other. So spaces like this, where we can gather as community and not yell at each other. Of course, I'm doing all the talking, so you don't have much chance to yell, but it's just such a refuge. It's so nourishing to be together.
Just you talking about those yin spaces just feels so yummy. And even just hearing about them relaxes the nervous system. When, earlier we were talking about dominator culture, and one of the reasons I like that word better than patriarchy is because we all have female and male aspects in us, right?
Yes.
And when we speak of patriarchy, it's easy to bring some sort of form into mind around masculine. But dominator culture just lets us know that we're all affected by it, regardless of sex, right? And so this leads into the question of another one of our watchers tonight who said, I asked Ram Dass about the divine feminine, and he said it was in all of us. And so can you speak to ways we can bring the beautiful, chaotic energy out more in satsang without harming each other?
What a beautiful question. And I asked Ram Dass the same thing, and he told me the same thing. And it was when I was writing Wild Mercy, and I was trying to get his take on all this. One of the great gifts in my life has been that Ram Dass, I've written a few books, and Ram Dass has been there for me for all of them. In fact, I don't know what it's going to be like. I'm writing one now, and he's in it, but he's not there to talk to me about it. And that's something that is heartbreakingly, it's something I will miss more than I can bear. But one of the things he said to me when I asked him that question was, he said, look at me. I am a man with a woman's soul. Ram Dass was bisexual and kept that very private for most of his life, although in his new soon to be released memoir that he and Ramesh worked on for the last 5 years or so, constantly beautiful. If you haven't seen, galleys yet, you will be seeing the real thing soon. He does disclose his lifelong grappling with his sexuality and finally resting in the holiness of who he was. But I wrote several pieces over the years. You could probably Google them. essays and things about Ramdas being a man who taught me about the divine feminine, because he really was. He did have that feminine heart. And at the risk of sounding sacrilegious or disrespectful to our beloved teacher, he also carried the toxic masculinity, in himself, in his teachings at times. And he had to really look at that shadow in himself. And he wasn't always able to see it or dismantle it. Like, I was thinking about every morning, lots of mornings, I do a chakra meditation that Ramdas taught me when I was a teenager. Many of you know it, 10 breaths through the heart. There's a recording on the Be Here Now network on this, I think. 10 breaths through the heart, 10 through the throat chakra, 10 through the third eye, and 10 through the crown, and then back down as a kind of way to drop into meditation. And I've used that for many years. But over the years, I've added the solar plexus, the third chakra, the second chakra, the space of creativity and sexuality, and the root chakra, the connectedness to Mother Earth. And Ramdas actually said in that teaching, I'm sure it's on that recording too, don't bother with the lower chakras because they'll just get you in trouble. Right? Jackie's having a reaction over there. And so I know that he would now, and at the end of his life too, would have said, oh yeah, you're totally right. Let's integrate all of that. Let's welcome those. That's good trouble, as John Lewis would say, that those chakras. And it is, as you said, the person who asked this question, it is wild and chaotic, and it is holy ground. Jackie, what's your response?
Oh, I hope I wasn't too
No, I want to know.
I'm just so thrilled because I've gone through a similar journey of all the teachers telling me heart up, and being like, wait, the womb is powerful and sacred and so important for a woman's psyche and spirituality. Like, how can we leave that out? And all of the roots and the earth and the embodiment, how can we leave that out? And so to hear you say the same thing about pulling those into the practice, my heart just soars.
Good.
So, yeah. So thank you. And the good trouble.
Yeah.
Do two more questions and then we'll wrap up. And one is from a watcher who's asking, in addition to Ramdas, that's my part, but in addition to Ramdas, can you suggest historical and contemporary male authors, thinkers who have jettisoned the patriarchal straitjacket to embrace the feminine in their work?
Oh, so many. There are so many of my brothers who are doing this work and doing it beautifully. I think of Llewellyn Vaughan Lee, who is a contemporary Sufi teacher. Llewellyn Vaughan Lee. He's been at this for a long, long time. Pir Ziyad Inayat Khan in the Sufi tradition. Just off the top of my head, I was just thinking about Franco Staszewski, who's part of our extended Ramdas community, and also is a Buddhist teacher who has been doing that work for real authentic way, and has been sending me little love notes encouraging me to bring this to our satsang more. And who else? I think Father Richard Rohr in the Christian tradition is doing this work for sure. I often, as a Jewish, Hindu, Sufi, Buddhist, pagan woman, I find myself in Christian contemplative and social justice spaces because of my translations of the Spanish mystics mostly. And I have heard men in the Episcopal Church especially preaching from the pulpit, intentionally using feminine pronouns for God for years. So it is happening. Our brothers are supporting us, but also needing and wanting this work as much as women are, and are as hungry and thirsty for the feminine, the wellspring of feminine wisdom.
Yes. Lastly, can you share a bit about the challenges of spiritual leadership when conflict arises?
No. Okay, I'll try. Oh, wow. Okay. So this is what I talked to Mirabai Bush about today. You know, she was one of the people I had a conversation with a few hours ago, and it was about that, and about how I don't feel like I have any authority, I have any answers, I have any power to wield. And when contention and conflict arises in my spiritual family, it physically hurts me. And I can write books and books about the fierce feminine. You know, the subtitle of Wild Mercy is Living the Fierce and Tender Wisdom of the Women Mystics. Personally, I prefer the tender side. But I know I need to embrace the ferocity as well. But how do we speak truth to power? How do we say a resounding no to abuses of power and still remain rooted in that heart that is vast enough to remember that we belong to each other? So it has something to do with vulnerability, as Brené Brown has so eloquently taught in the last few years. It has something to do with intentionally setting aside our dualistic preconceptions about things and allowing ourselves to not know, and to engage in deep listening of the heart. And then also courageously saying, this is not okay. Injustice to one harms the entire fabric of interbeing to which we all belong. And conversely, or not even conversely, also, whenever we tend and mend any strand that is broken in this human community or this community of creation to which we belong, we are healing the whole. It's a work in progress for me, very much. But I bow to those of you who are both speaking out with your resounding no and offering refuge with your loving yes right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mirabai.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. So it's so lovely to be with you and to hear from you and listen to you. Just such amazing wisdom. Like, you hold this feminine wisdom and this gracious heart and this authentic vulnerability. And you offer this great invitation to all of us to step into these places in ourselves. And it feels like, really, as I've said before, like balm to the soul in many ways. So thank you for doing it all of these years and continuing to do it. If people want to find you, how would they find you?
So you could just Google my name, Mirabai Starr, Mirabai, Starr with 2 R's. And that'll take you to my website and various writings. But my website's a good place to connect.
And I encourage everyone to get Wild Mercy. It's just such a brilliant book. So
thank you, Jackie. Thank you, everyone. Much love.
I want to just give a few announcements before we sign up, which is not only to find you, but if you love these live streams and these virtual retreats and the resources on the website, please continue to show up, continue to use them, and consider offering your support as well. You can go to ramdas.org/support. And then a reminder to sign up for the fellowships. We have the general fellowship calls. We have the meetups where we have the breakout rooms. We have the women's fellowship and the Black, Indigenous people of color fellowship. All ways to build allyship, all ways to build community. And don't forget that we have the Soul Land series on Sunday nights as well. So thank you all so, so much for being here, for all that you all do in the world. Much love.